You're not going to believe what Christine Lagarde just said on stage. And if you've been following XRP, this might be the confirmation we've all been waiting for, because in a single sentence, the president of the European Central Bank may have just revealed that the digital euro isn't a distant idea. It's already being built, tested, and potentially connected to the very technology that Ripple and the XRP ledger have perfected. Now, before we dive in, this is not financial advice. It's deep research backed by verifiable statements and policy data. And if you appreciate content that cuts through the noise and actually shows what's happening beneath the surface, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to the channel and drop a comment with your thoughts before the end. It helps more than you know. All right, buckle up, because what you're about to hear could change the way you see the European financial system and XRP's role inside it forever. Christine Lagarde just stood in front of the world's most powerful bankers and government officials and stated it is critical to complete the savings and investment union, the banking union, and to rapidly establish the legislative framework for the potential introduction of our digital euro. Simple words, but if you understand what's hidden in that sentence, it's absolutely explosive. She wasn't just talking about modernization. She was talking about the activation phase of Europe's central bank digital currency, a phase where tokenized liquidity, digital ID, and AI-based compliance infrastructure merge into one unified monetary network, the backbone of a programmable financial system spanning all 30 member states. And when you trace that system back to its technological roots, one name keeps reappearing: Ripple. You've made it this far. Give me just another 45 seconds, because this is where the dots start to connect. The European Commission's 2025 roadmap lays it all out in plain language. Digital ID wallets for every EU citizen, CBDC settlement rails capable of instant cross-border payments, AI-driven transaction monitoring under the EU AI Act. To the average person, that might sound like futuristic bureaucracy, but to anyone who studied the XRP ledger, it's obvious these are the same core design principles Ripple has been demonstrating for years. Instant settlement, verified identity layers, and programmable compliance baked directly into the network. And here's where it gets wild. The Bank of France has already tested Ripple's private ledger for its own digital euro prototype officially, publicly. They even stated that XRP's architecture, permissioned validation, deterministic finality, and global interoperability fits the requirements of a European CBDC. That's not rumor. That's in the central bank documentation. Now think about what happens when that private infrastructure designed for central banks starts aligning with Ripple's public ecosystem. The same XRP ledger that already powers corridors between Asia, Africa, and Latin America, that's the bridge being built in real time. And that brings us to what Lagarde might have accidentally confirmed, that the digital euro framework scheduled for decision later this year will be built on interoperable rails capable of communicating across jurisdictions, which means the European Central Bank isn't creating an isolated currency. It's creating a node inside a global liquidity network. And what asset sits at the center of that network? The one designed for neutral cross-border settlement between institutions: XRP. Meanwhile, Ripple has quietly expanded its European footprint. Their payment arm is now licensed in Luxembourg and Ireland, giving it full EMI access across the EU. They've partnered with Paris-based Lemonway, integrated with Swiss custodians, and co-founded the Digital Euro Association, which directly advises European policymakers on CBDC architecture. So, while the headlines focus on politics, Ripple has been embedding itself in the regulatory fabric of Europe. It's not speculation, it's infrastructure. And here's the kicker. Ripple's own CBDC platform can technically operate without XRP, but once it connects to on-demand liquidity, XRP becomes the engine. That's the same trapdoor strategy Brad Garlinghouse mentioned years ago. Build what institutions can adopt today and design it so the bridge asset becomes indispensable tomorrow. This is the exact pattern unfolding right now, and Christine Lagarde's speech may be the first public acknowledgement that Europe is ready to move from theory to implementation. Now, if you're watching the markets while all this unfolds, XRP is sitting around $2.35 as we record this. Quiet, steady, almost too calm. But under the surface, institutional. Adoption isn't waiting. We're talking 500 financial institutions participating in the ECB's 12-month pilot, each testing tokenized bond settlement, digital identity integration, and cross-border interoperability using XRP ledger infrastructure. The same playbook we saw with NASDAQ and DTCC in the US, the same liquidity corridor pattern that always shows up right before utility activation. So when Lagarde says it's critical to accelerate implementation, she's not giving political fluff. She's signaling a countdown because Europe's financial system is about to flip its backend from traditional Swift rails to tokenized, programmable liquidity rails. And here's the truth no one wants to admit. There isn't another blockchain in the world with Ripple's level of institutional penetration inside Europe right now. Not Ethereum, not Stellar, not Hetra. Ripple is already there, meeting with regulators, integrating custody systems, and shaping the digital Euro's technical standards from the inside. That's why this moment matters. If you're still watching, you're ahead of 99% of the world right now, because by the time the mainstream media catches up, the architecture will already be built, and the digital euro may be quietly settling through the same liquidity rails that XRP holders have been front-running for a decade. This isn't financial hype, it's structural alignment. Christine Lagarde's slip wasn't an accident. It was a glimpse into the next chapter of global finance. And in the next section, we're going to expose exactly how Ripple's partnerships, EU corridors, and one exchange in particular, MEXC Global, fit into this global liquidity reset. So stay tuned, because what comes next ties everything together. What you're about to see next explains why Europe's financial blueprint isn't just a collection of policies. It's a coordinated system Ripple has been preparing for years, because behind the speeches, behind the legislative language, is the real mechanism that connects central banks, commercial institutions, and retail finance into one programmable network, and the foundation of that mechanism, interoperability. The European Central Bank isn't building its digital euro in isolation. They're constructing it as part of a multi-tiered financial infrastructure, one that has to communicate across borders, asset classes, and payment layers in real time. And if you've studied Ripple's architecture, you know that's exactly what the XRP ledger was designed for. Ripple's CBDC platform uses a private instance of the XRP ledger that allows governments to issue digital currencies, settle wholesale transactions, and then bridge liquidity into the public ecosystem when necessary. In simple terms, central banks can keep privacy and control while still using XRP's settlement rails to move value instantly between countries. That's the quiet revolution Christine Lagarde just confirmed. Europe isn't competing with blockchain, it's adopting it. Here's the part most people miss. When Lagarde said the legislative framework is critical, she was referring to one thing: the legal clarity needed to unlock institutional liquidity. Because once the ECB finalizes the digital euro, every central bank in the Eurozone will need on and off ramps for liquidity, token issuance, and FX conversion. That's not just a payment problem, it's a market-making problem. And guess who's been preparing for that exact moment? Ripple, through its global partnerships and its strategic presence across European payment corridors. They already have regulatory approval in Luxembourg and Ireland. They're connected to Lemonway, which manages payment flow for hundreds of EU marketplaces. And they're plugged into Swiss custody networks, giving them the ability to handle tokenized treasuries and stable coin. Reserves under FINMA regulation. In other words, Ripple has positioned itself as the liquidity bridge Europe will need the second the digital euro goes live. Now, let's tie this to the markets and one of the most overlooked opportunities for positioning, MEX Global. People ask constantly where they can actually access the tokens, liquidity pools, and pairs that institutions are watching. That's why I always mention MEXC, because it's one of the few exchanges that offers deep liquidity for XRP, FLR, HBR, XLM, and other cross-border assets that are directly connected to this new settlement infrastructure. And here's what I always tell people. If you're holding XRP and you want to see how liquidity behaves before the broader market catches on, track the XRP USDT pair volume on MEX. That's where the smart flow starts showing first. You can set alerts, monitor trading depth, and study how institutional sentiment is shifting weeks before it shows up in mainstream. Data, because by the time it hits the news, it's already been priced in by the insiders. Mixi gives you the analytics window into that. The link's in the description below if you want to explore that liquidity behavior for yourself. Now, here's where it gets strategic. Ripple's long game isn't just the ECB. It's the global liquidity network that connects the ECB, the Bank of England, the MAS in Singapore, and the Central Bank of the UAE. Each of those institutions has already been running interoperability pilots, and in most of them, XRP or Ripplet infrastructure shows up somewhere in the documentation. That's not a coincidence, it's the blueprint. Ripple isn't selling technology. They're selling the bridge between compliance and liquidity, the piece that lets money move legally and instantly across jurisdictions. And once those systems activate, the demand for on-chain liquidity skyrockets, which means every drop of XRP in circulation suddenly has global settlement value, not speculative trading value. If you've made it this far, stay locked in, because in the next section, we're going to break down the market psychology and whale behavior that's happening quietly around this shift, why retail is distracted while institutions are accumulating, why boring price action right now is a setup, not a signal of weakness, and how the next liquidity unlock could re-prick XRP faster than anyone expects. This is where it gets real. What's happening isn't just another crypto headline, it's the quiet coordination of a global financial reset. And XRP is sitting at the heart of it. From Christine Lagarde's slip on stage to the ECB's official pilot documents, the writing is on the wall. The institutions are no longer testing, they're transitioning. And the people who see that before it's fully visible are the ones who capture the upside when the liquidity floodgates open. Think about this. The digital euro, the digital yen, tokenized treasuries, and on-demand liquidity corridors, all being stitched together through the same network architecture Ripple has been perfecting for a decade. When those pieces finally align, XRP stops being a crypto play. It becomes the bridge asset of a tokenized economy. We've seen this movie before the early internet, the rise of mobile banking, the instant messaging era. The same pattern always repeats. The world ignores the rails until they become indispensable. That's what XRP is about to become, indispensable. If this opened your eyes, tap that like button, drop your take in the comments, and subscribe to Matrix Millionaire for the next decode before it hits mainstream. So here's my final thought. The mainstream will tell you to wait until clarity arrives. The insiders are already acting like it's here. While the market sleeps, the network is being built. While the headlines talk regulation, the liquidity is already moving. And by the time this transformation hits the front page, it'll be too late to position. Stay alert, stay informed, and remember, this isn't just about crypto anymore. It's about the infrastructure of money itself. And it's all unfolding right in front of